There's three things that I think every human being on the planet needs to know about themselves to operate in their strength zone. I love structure. I love routine. I love consistency. For me personally, I heavily identify as an introvert. I derive my energy in solitude. That's a part of the game, and you just have to accept that. But you'll learn just as much in between sessions and at meals and at nights from the other people. So it's so important to connect with others.
I recently polled almost 1,000 realtors, and the outcome was unbelievable, which is that almost every single one of them is struggling with the exact same things. Fear of failure, loneliness, self-doubt, distraction, overwhelm, and not knowing what to do on a consistent daily basis in order to smash their goals. But today, that's going to come to an end. I have the pleasure of bringing on Allen Stein Jr., who, mind you, was previously the mindset coach for Kobe Bryant, Kevin Durant, LeBron James, and Steph Curry, the most elite basketball players in existence, and has now worked with some of the top realtors in the industry, as well as Fortune 500 and 100 companies, to transform the execution of somebody who's struggling and turning them very quickly into a top performer. And today, we are going to break down how to overcome every single one of the struggles that the majority of agents are facing right now. This is unbelievably tactical, and this is proven. So if you execute on this, you will see an immediate difference in your business. You're going to be blown away, because Allen has talked privately to some of my communities before, and the feedback is that it is the one call and the one conversation that changed their business forever. Now, two quick things before we're getting started. Number one, I will link all of Allen's incredible content below so that you could check it out. But number two, most excitingly, is that Allen is actually one of the keynote speakers at our upcoming event, the Atlas Alliance Summit, where if you register, like hundreds have, you will get a free guest ticket to bring anybody that you want to the event. So if you're looking for a pivotal breakthrough in your business and your life, and you want to be educated by some of the top agents like Suman Kim, who did 5 million GCI in his first 2.5 years, Darren Landry, who's done over 1 billion sales in his career, people like Ed Milet, James Lawrence, and Jen Gottlieb, this is going to be the event of the year. You don't want to miss it, and I can tell you that. And up until August 15th, you'll be able to get a free guest ticket if you register for the event. So make sure you click the link in the description to check out the Atlas Alliance Summit and register so you can get that free guest pass before they sell out. But otherwise, let's dive in and show you how to overcome every single struggle the majority of agents are facing right now. All right, Allen, well, super excited to have you back on the channel, man. You know, the last conversation we had, which I'll link below, was unbelievable when it comes to tactical strategies of you know, how to execute. But I'm excited to dive a little bit deeper, especially playing on, you know, the fears of the industry right now that a lot of people are facing. So before we start diving in, I'd love for you to give yourself a quick little introduction. You've worked with some unbelievable people, and your credibility is out of the world. So let's dive in.
Yeah, be happy to. Well, for context, and anyone that didn't catch our first conversation, I certainly highly recommend that you go back and you watch that one. The big noticeable difference will be I now have platinum blonde hair, whereas I had my brown salt and pepper look before, but I was just ready for a change. But as far as my past is concerned, the most important part for your audience to know is that basketball was my first love, and that I fell in love with the game very early in my life. And I'm so thankful that, 45 years later, basketball is still a really important part of my life. And I say that with the immense gratitude of someone that's been able to not only make a living, but build an extraordinary life around something I'm so passionate about. And for that, I'm truly grateful. I was a very dedicated basketball player for the first third of my life, and was able to play collegiately all the way up through Elon University down in North Carolina. And while I was at Elon, I started to fall in love with the training side of the game. The strength, conditioning, fitness, nutrition, and mindset, and decided that upon graduation that I would become a basketball performance coach. And I spent the next 20 years as a very dedicated basketball performance coach, and had an opportunity to work with some really elite players and coaches. And I'm very observant by nature, and I learned so many lessons and strategies and disciplines and approaches from these world-class players and coaches that I decided in 2017 to then shift away from basketball training and give my hand at corporate keynote speaking and writing. And that's what I do presently. So I work with businesses, large and small. I work with leaders, just starting entrepreneurs and folks in the real estate space, all the way up through executives in Fortune 100 companies, teaching them these principles and disciplines on how to, as you can see from the sign above my head, simplify success. I'm a big believer that complexity undermines execution, so that all of us need to be learning to untether from the unnecessarily complex, focus on the fundamentals, and work towards mastery of those during the unseen hours. And I always get so inspired and so excited when I talk with you, because I know we share so many perspectives and philosophies, and I've seen firsthand how these approaches work really well in the real estate space.
Yeah, man, it makes complete sense. And I love that you draw those parallels between, the highest performing athletes that you've been able to work with, the Kobe Bryants, the Steph Currys, Kevin Durant's, all, translating that over to people in real estate and the similarities in business and entrepreneurship of, what it takes to actually win and grow and stay focused. Because, we'll kind of go down this avenue of, the fact that we recently polled hundreds of agents, and a lot of the feedback of what people are struggling with came down to, loneliness, self-doubt, fear of failure, and being distracted. Those are kind of the four key things that we see people running into right now, especially with interest rates, the economy, the election, the lawsuits, all of this chaos. But you have a really great way of, as you alluded to, simplifying it and boiling it down to what people need to do today. So when it comes to executing, there's, I always like to start with distractions, because that's kind of the world that we live in right now, of people getting coached or watching YouTube videos or webinars, buying programs. And there's so many things that can work. And a lot of people struggle to execute on anything because they're trying to decide between a multitude of different avenues to go down. So when it comes to simplifying success and simplifying what it takes to execute, what does that look like for somebody that is currently overwhelmed and not doing anything?
Man, so much gold to unpack there, and so many thoughts running through my head. The first one is, I'm going to take a slight step back and just say that, through that poll that you did, all of those feelings and emotions that people are experiencing, the loneliness, the self-doubt, the imposter syndrome, the lack of confidence, the feeling of overwhelm, all of that stuff is completely normal. All that means, if you're feeling those things, is that you're human and you are part of the human condition. And we have all of those emotions and feelings for a reason. And for me, a perspective shift that I had a few years ago that I found really helpful is doing the best I can to not label any emotion or feeling as good or bad. They're all inherently neutral. Every feeling and emotion that we experience, whether it's joy and bliss and elation, or whether it's fear and jealousy and overwhelm, we have those emotions for a reason. They're basically just to signal to us what's going on in the world as we try to navigate our lives. So the first thing you need to do is just give yourself some grace and space and some compassion, and remind yourself that it is okay to feel those things. That means you're human. And I have worked with the highest performers in basketball and business and everyone in between. And even the highest performers in the world experience those exact same feelings and emotions. Now, what we need to be able to do is, once we acknowledge that we have those feelings, is we need to make sure we're taking control of our actions and our behaviors. So every single emotion is okay, but every single behavior and action is not necessarily okay. So we need to make sure that we remind ourselves that emotions are just information. They're not directives. They're designed to remind us, give us kind of red flags of what's going on in our lives, but they don't have to steer us in any direction. So the simplest way to say that is, it's okay to be frustrated or disappointed with, interest rates at present, but it's not okay to allow that to affect how you interact with your clients or how you show up in the world. So we need to make sure we separate those two. And once we can start looking at ourselves through the lens of compassion and grace, then we can start to develop, a relentless process on how we can actually move things forward. And, another perspective that has really helped me is always making sure I understand the difference between what things I have control over and what things I don't. And I do the best I can to spend the vast majority of my time, energy, and effort focused on the things I do have control over. And in essence, it really boils down to two, and that's my effort and my attitude. but there are certainly some offshoots of that I have control over. I'm in control of how prepared I am in any situation. I'm in control of my enthusiasm. So there's other areas that we have control over. Most of the things that you just mentioned, and most of the things that tend to give us that feeling of overwhelm, interest rates, an election year, the economy in general, we have zero control over those things. So any time, energy, or effort and I'll actually use this word very specifically, waste on things that we don't have control over means we don't have that energy to direct towards the things that we do. And I actually find it very liberating and therapeutic and empowering to put my focus on the things I have control over. So for me as a professional speaker, there's a lot of similarities between that and being in the real estate space because, when the economy is booming, more people hire speakers. When the economy's not, less people hire speakers. So on some level, my business is also at the mercy of the way, of the economy. But I can't focus on that. I need to stick to my process and I need to do what I do regardless of the things that I don't have control over. So to me, it's all about taking that power back. So step one is being kind to yourself and compassionate. Step two is focusing on the things that you have control over and your processes and your outbound, sales calls and reach and the things that you're doing. So those are two initial steps that start creating the momentum, and then we'll have some additional steps to continue that process.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And on the vein of focusing on what you do have control over, one of the things that a lot of people get trapped up in is focusing on the past. And they feel like, okay, the last 6 months or last 18 months didn't go as planned, and they're constantly living in the sorrows of what didn't go well instead of being present. So I know that you've got a really good philosophy on where you allocate your energy. Do you want to kind of unpack that for a second?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. In fact, it's usually kind of bookend between the past and the future. People tend to jockey back and forth between the past and the future, and they just keep skipping over the most important time, which is the present. Because ultimately, high performance in any area of life can only exist in the present moment. We can't change the past. Now, a slight nuance to that is we can change our relationship with the past. So there might have been something that happened to you 5 years ago that at the time you thought was the worst thing that has ever happened to you. But now with 5 years of life experience and more maturity and wisdom, you might be able to look back with hindsight and say, no, that was actually one of the best things to ever happen to me because it caused me to change in a certain way. So we can't change the facts of the past, but we can change our relationship. And I do believe that it is important to learn from the past. I just don't believe in living there. I don't believe in spending most of my time looking in the rearview mirror of what I've already done. So it's important to change the relationship with certain things in the past so that they empower us and move us forward. It's important to learn lessons from the past if we happen to have made any mistakes or stepped on any landmines, if you will, but we don't need to live there. At the same time, if we skip over the present and we look at the future, it's important for folks to understand that the future is 100% hypothetical. You can't ever be in the future. The only place the future exists is in our minds and in the language that we use. We can use future-based language, but you can't ever be in the future because once you get to the future, it's now the present. Like you can never actually get there. Now, with that being said, I do believe that we need to plan and prepare for the future, but we do that with the decisions we make in the present moment. The best example I can think of is, I'm 48 years old and I'm crystal clear on the man I want to be, let's just say 12 years from now, the 60-year-old Allen. And I want the 60-year-old Allen to be physically, mentally, and emotionally fit. So with that being said, I try to make sure that the vast majority of decisions that I make in the present are in alignment with the 60-year-old Allen being physically, mentally, and emotionally fit. But the beautiful part is I'm not postponing reaping those rewards. I'm experiencing them in the present, but I am planning for the future because the things I do today will determine whether or not the 60-year-old version of me is physically, mentally, and emotionally fit. I can't wait until then. I need to do those things now. So very similar to the past, I believe in looking ahead and planning for the future, but I don't believe in living there either. I believe in investing most of my faculties most of the time in the present moment and focusing on what's the most important thing in front of me right now. So, in the real estate space, it's okay to look back over the last 6 to 18 months and evaluate the things that have gone well so you can do more of those. Evaluate the things that maybe didn't go so well so that you're cautious moving forward, and have an idea of the person that you want to be or where you want your business to be 6 to 18 months from now. And once you've got those two bookends with some clarity, now you put all of your attention into the present moment and coming up with a plan that you can execute every single day that will systematically and incrementally move you towards that goal. And, once again, this stuff I'm sharing, these are very basic principles and very basic frameworks, but I want to make sure everyone listening hears me. None of this is easy. There's a difference between basic and easy. Those are not synonyms, and yet people mistakenly use those words as if they're interchangeable. They don't mean the same thing. What it takes to be an unbelievably high performer in real estate, basketball, or business, what it takes to be both healthy and wealthy is very basic in principle. It's a handful of core approaches and perspectives. But doing those things every single day, especially during the unseen hours when no one else is watching, is really, really, really challenging. And with that said, I always want to make sure that I make this disclaimer that I'm not coming from a place of mastery. These are all things that I'm still working on with myself, working on in my business. So I've made great progress over the last few years, and I'm very proud of the direction that I'm going. But I want to make sure everyone listening knows that I haven't figured all this stuff out, and I haven't, I'm not the master of any of this. But I do like the direction I'm going, and that's certainly my hope and intention for everyone watching right now.
Yeah, it's going to that concept of basic but not the easiest thing, I think is where a lot of people get tripped up, because a lot of people are distracted trying to find the easiest route to success, especially in real estate. And, I would love to kind of go down the avenue of understanding the delineation between the highest performers and the ones that are struggling, because what I see is the ones who are struggling are always chasing that next rabbit, that next trend, that next opportunity, thinking that it might be the home run. They're focusing on maybe this is going to be the big win that changes my business forever. If I just do this one thing, or if this just one thing works out, this is going to change everything. But the elite and the winners don't have that same thought process. They're focusing on fundamentals. And I would love to really dive into that, because I think that's an important conversation. Every successful agent I've seen has mastered the fundamentals, brick by brick, as you say. So when agents are trying to get into momentum and find that next opportunity that's going to, that they can capitalize on, what's your advice there in terms of focus?
Well, it's similar to a basketball player that's younger and new to the game, and they want to go out and mimic a move that they saw LeBron do last night. And it's like, you can't skip all of those steps. If you can picture a pyramid, what you just described so insightfully is people are so focused on reaching the apex of that pyramid and doing what's at the tip, and they're completely ignoring the base of the pyramid. But the base and the foundation is where everything else is built upon. So you don't build a pyramid starting at the top and work your way down. You build a pyramid by creating an incredibly strong base and working towards mastery of those fundamentals. And then over time, as you continue to refine those fundamentals, you still graduate and level up to more advanced techniques, or as you just said, maybe more advanced opportunities. But you can't skip steps to get there. And as you just said, the highest performers have a strong trust, respect, and appreciation for building that foundation. And the cool part is this is true in every area of our life. I mean, it's true in relationships, it's true in health, it's true in wealth. I can't tell you how many times when I was in the basketball training space, I'd start working with a new player, and one of their first questions was, what supplement should I be taking? And I said, supplements? You don't even eat a healthy diet, you don't get very much sleep, and you don't train very hard. You can't skip those 3 steps and then in this case, literally try and take a magic pill or powder and expect to get good results. Supplement, by definition, means in addition to, which means you have to eat a really clean diet. You need to train very hard and consistently. You need to get great sleep. You need to do all of that stuff first. And as you've mastered those building blocks, then maybe appropriate supplementation can get you to that next level. So, I'm sure that you and I could collaborate and come up with a list of basics and fundamentals in the real estate space that everyone should be working towards mastery of first. And then once you've started to work towards that, then over time you can slowly start to layer up maybe some more advanced techniques or opportunities. But it all starts at the basics. And anytime we try to skip those steps, that's when we have a problem. Because the adage goes, in order to get to the top of a ladder, you have to touch every single step. You can't skip rungs. But one misstep can send you all the way back down to the bottom. So we also have to make sure that we're attacking these things with precision and with effort and with discernment. But yeah, I'm just such a believer in working on those basics.
Yeah, it goes back to that story of using Kobe in practice and looking at the fact that he's not trying to do some dunk competition moves. He's just doing the basics over and over and over and over again. And I see that with top agents as well, as everybody thinks that they live this sexy, lavish life where there's, deals are just coming to them in groves. But the truth is they just continue to focus on what got them to that point, which is the basics.
Yes.
And
well, one example I can think of, and I imagine this is very true in real estate because I've seen this play out in other businesses and other industries. But folks now, especially with social media, and people understand they need to be socially savvy, and I agree completely. Social media can be an unbelievable avenue for meeting prospective clients and for building your business. But they spend so much time trying to create a viral video or a viral post, and they could have allocated that time to simply making calls, like smiling and dialing, like simply reaching out direct one-on-one to potential prospects. So instead of spending all of this time trying to hit a home run on a viral video, which we both know there is no magic script or blueprint to do that, they could have allocated that time or invested that time into something more proven. And, ultimately what we're doing when we do that, we're just kind of kicking the can down the road and we're procrastinating. We're thinking, hey, if I spend a couple of weeks creating this video, it could have this massive influx of potential business. Whereas you could have gotten just as much business by reaching out to 10 prospects every single day, again, 5, 6, 7 days a week for that same time period. And you probably would get a much better return on that specific outreach, especially if you've narrowed down, who your clientele is. Look at the range of the homes that you sell and who is your target client that buys those types of homes. And then how can you add value to that specific demographic? And how can you forge strong relationships and add value and create value for that group? If you spend more time doing that, you'll sell way more homes than if you're trying to come up with this one-hit wonder of a video.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that kind of opens up a really important conversation that goes back to that list of when we polled people, which is self-doubt. Because there's a lot of times where people will hear, I just need to focus on this, or if I just follow this blueprint, it's going to work out, and I need to simplify, and all of that is incredible. But then they sit there and think, well, will it work for me? Can I really do this? What if I get negative feedback? What if I get hate comment? They're always living in this self-doubt of saying, okay, the first thing that I usually hear is, well, if I just knew what I needed to do every day when I wake up, I would go do it. And so, okay, you can give them the blueprint of what to do every day, but then they sit there and think, well, now what do I do? Now, how can I actually do this? I've got all these fears in my head and I'm doubting myself. So what's kind of the solution to that for agents that are living in this self-doubt of wondering about the what ifs and maybe this will happen and maybe that will be the case? How do people start to overcome that and be on a better trajectory to just start to execute?
I'm so glad you brought that up because this is such a big area for, and again, not just in real estate, in every single area of business and really every single area of life. And it kind of initially goes back to those original points where we started talking before, that the first thing you have to do is just give yourself some space and grace and compassion and acknowledge that it's okay to feel self-doubt. It might not feel good, and it's certainly not a preferred feeling, but it just means you're human. Everybody on the planet at some point in their life has experienced some type of self-doubt. And in the context we're using it, self-doubt is basically the opposite of confidence. It means we're lacking confidence. We're lacking belief. And ultimately confidence is our belief in ourselves that we'll be able to execute in the moment when we need to, and our belief in ourselves that we can overcome adversity and challenge. I mean, really, that's the definition of confidence. And anytime you're lacking that, the worst thing you can do is be self-critical and judgmental and pack guilt and shame on top of that. And now you'll start to compound that self-doubt. Now you'll start to feel worse because you feel self-doubt, and it can certainly spiral out of control. So the first thing you do is you just take a deep breath and go, right now, I'm feeling some doubt. I don't quite have the confidence or self-belief that I'd like, and that's okay. So that gets you to baseline. Step 2, as we already alluded, is say, okay, what portions of this do I have control over? It has been my experience that confidence increases when we put our time and energy into the things we have control over, and confidence decreases when we give our power away to the things we don't control. Now, the third step, which is actually building confidence, which is what you just asked, has a handful of moving parts. Our good friend Ed Milet always says that confidence stems from keeping the promises we make to ourselves. And that is a huge piece of the confidence puzzle. So if you tell yourself you're going to do something, if you follow through and do it and you keep the promise to yourself, your confidence goes up. If you don't, your confidence will go down. And this could be anything from saying, hey, I'm going to smile and dial 10 times every single morning when I get in the office. If you do that, your confidence will go up. If you don't, it will go down. It'd be no different than if you said, hey, every morning I'm going to go for a 30-minute walk. Well, every morning you do that, you start to add bricks to that confidence wall. And every time you skip it or make an excuse or say you don't feel like it, now you start to take bricks away. So we got to keep the promises we make to ourselves. The second thing we need to do is understand that confidence comes from competence, which means demonstrated performance, which means we have to start putting ourselves in positions where we can see ourselves be successful. One of the reasons Stephen Curry is the best shooter the game of basketball has ever seen is because he has seen that ball go through the basket probably more than anyone else in the history of the game. And the overwhelming majority of those shots have been made in empty gyms when no one else is watching. He puts himself in a position where he sees the ball go through the hoop and he starts to realize he's a competent shooter. But also keep in mind that he starts out very close to the basket with very close shots and then slowly works his way out. He starts with very basic shooting form before he goes to more game-specific moves. So by the time he starts doing game-specific moves in his workouts, he's already seen the ball go through the basket a few hundred times. So same thing in any area, whatever you're trying to improve your confidence in, put yourself in a position where you can start to see yourself be successful, where you can start to see the ball go through the basket and you can start to see demonstrated performance, and then continue to let the momentum build and grow from there. And then the third component of confidence really comes from how we choose to talk to ourselves, our self-talk. I think I can make a very compelling argument that the little voice in our head, the inner dialogue we have, are probably the most important things we'll ever say. It's the things we say to ourselves. And we want to make sure that we speak to ourselves in an empowering and compassionate way, that we try to reduce judgment and criticism as much as possible. Now, this doesn't mean we let ourselves off the hook. I believe in holding myself to an incredibly high standard of excellence. It just means that when I fall short, I don't beat myself up over it. I try to learn the lesson, unpack what it is I could have done differently, and then quickly move on and go to the next play. And if you can keep promises to yourself, if you can put yourself in a position where you're seeing yourself be competent, and you can have positive dialogue with your inner voice, those three things will start to create the momentum of confidence. And the more confidence you have, the more you're shielding out self-doubt creeping in.
Yeah, I love that. And even just that concept of doing the things when nobody's watching is so powerful, because a lot of people, again, are on Zoom calls, or they're dialed in and when they're coaching or with their clients, but behind closed doors when nobody's watching, they fail to execute and they start to disappoint themselves. And I think that's where a lot of people go off the rails, is when they become familiar with disappointing themselves and they just get to the point where they accept it, and that becomes a very dangerous place to be, versus the people that focus on when they put something in their calendar, even if it's as simple as doing the dishes, they actually do it.
Yes. Well, this just sparked a thought. I'm so glad you went in that direction. There's three things that I think every human being on the planet needs to know about themselves to operate in their strength zone. And one of the cool things is, what I love about real estate is, generally speaking, you have a little bit more freedom to kind of create your own schedule. And I know there's exceptions to this, but the industry in general is not just necessarily a 9 to 5 in a cubicle with handcuffs on. Like, you have some freedom to kind of build your day how you choose. And there's 3 things that every person needs to know about themselves and how they operate. And knowing these 3 things and creating an environment and a schedule based on your answers to these 3 things will make you super efficient and will increase confidence. The first thing you need to know about yourself is, do you prefer early mornings or do you prefer late nights? As far as when you do your best thinking, your best critical thinking, your best brainstorming, your best, when do you have the most physical energy? Is it in the mornings or in the evenings? And please know that there is no right answer to any of these questions. This all comes down to having the self-awareness to know where you operate best. For me personally, I have known my entire life that I excel in the mornings. From 6 to 10 a.m. is when I am at my best, physically, mentally, and emotionally. And I say with a huge smile and a wink, from 6 to 10 p.m. is when I'm probably at my worst. That's usually when I'm shutting the engines off because I'm not doing my best thinking or brainstorming or innovating or energy at that time. So for me, when I have the luxury of creating my schedule each day, I try to make sure that from 6 to 10 a.m., that is when I'm doing my heavy lifting. And I mean that literally and metaphorically. That's when I'm creating content. That's when I'm scheduling calls. That's when I'm at my best. So I try to make sure my day is weighted appropriately. The second thing people need to know is, do you prefer structure or do you prefer spontaneity? Do you operate best when you know what every minute of the day is going to look like? Or do you operate better when you've got some freedom to things are a little bit looser? Once again, for me personally, I love structure. I love routine. I love consistency. I love having mapped out exactly what my morning is going to look like before I even go to bed. Now, I have some friends that are unbelievable high performers that feeling suffocates them. They don't want to have that level of structure. They need a little bit more freedom. So they go to bed knowing kind of where the big rocks need to be the next day, but they just put some guardrails up and it gives them the freedom to operate. But it's important to know, because if you love structure like I do, then you'll create these different schedules and routines so you can operate within that. And then the third thing you need to know is, are you more of an introvert or an extrovert? And I want to go by the traditional definition of this. And this is, where do you derive your energy? For me personally, I heavily identify as an introvert. I derive my energy in solitude, in stillness, when I'm by myself. Now, I love people. I love having conversations like this, and I cannot wait to be on your stage at the Atlas Summit.
Hey, are you looking to take your real estate business to a completely new level, but feel like you need a proven plan of action of what to do every day in this market to become a top producer? Well, if that's you, you need to come to the Atlas Aligned Summit this September in Nashville. This live event has a speaker lineup like you won't find at any other realtor-focused event in 2024. Let me explain why so many people are coming and why tickets are selling fast. We have the likes of Ed Milet, Allen Stein Jr., and James Lawrence talking about how to break through obstacles and everything related to mindset. Joshua Smith giving you tactical strategies based on the NAR settlement of how to become a top producer in the next 12 months. Jen Gottlieb on how to leverage AI to build your personal brand. Suman Kim for the first time ever revealing the secrets that allowed him to close $5 million in gross commission in 2.5 years for free from YouTube. Darren Langell on how to become the dominant agent in any farm community, and so much more. We're going to be breaking down artificial intelligence, video marketing, time management, productivity, systems, processes, accountability, everything that you need in order to go into the next 12 months and make them the best you've ever faced in your career, despite the challenging times that we're facing in this market. Tickets are selling fast. You can go to atlasalliancesummit.com or click the link in the description to get the best pricing right now. This event is all about raising your standards and achieving your true potential and removing all distractions so you know exactly what you need to do every day. And these speakers are coming together like never before in order to give you the proven roadmap based on what works right now. So if you're looking for a breakthrough and you want to be surrounded by 1,500 like-minded agents just like you, wanting to go to that next level and willing to do what it takes, we'll see you at the Atlas Aligned Summit.
Being around people and pouring into people is the most fulfilling thing I get to do, but it drains me. I kid you not, at the end of this call, I'll be as exhausted as if I just went out and ran 2 miles because I'm expending a tremendous amount of energy, but it's what I want to be doing. But I know that in order for me to be at my best, after I expend energy, I need to be in solitude and stillness so that I can replenish and recharge my battery. So obviously, if you're in real estate and you need to have open houses and you need to meet with clients and you're doing home showings and those types of things, like you need to be on and you need to be, social and in front of people. And if that's draining you, then you need to balance that with some stillness and some alone time to recharge. So if you can figure out how you operate best in those 3 areas, then you can start to build your schedule around it, and that will put you in your strength zone. That will mean you're becoming from a stronger operating system, and when you do that, you'll start to see better results. And when you start to see better results, then your confidence will go up. So knowing the answer to those 3 questions is crucial to simplifying success.
Yeah, that's so powerful, especially when you look at the concept of just self-reflecting, because I think a lot of people don't have that, perspective of being able to look within. They're always saying, well, this person achieved it this way, so I'm just going to do what they did. But maybe you have completely different personalities or styles or approaches and lifestyles, and now you're trying to emulate something that's not genuinely and authentically the best fit for you. And being able to have that, perspective of looking within and self-auditing yourself and being able to have that, humble conversation of, who actually am I and what works best for me, instead of seeing what works for somebody else, being able to tailor that to what works for your own business and in your own lifestyle.
Yeah. And as you said, you just hit on the key word. It comes down to self-awareness. So instead of worrying so much about what other people are doing, and as I just said, for me personally, morning times, having some stillness to be introverted, and craving structure, those are my 3 superpowers. But that doesn't mean that has to be the same 3 for someone else. I can promise you someone watching and listening to this right now is an unbelievable high performer, and they might do it the exact opposite of what it is that I do. Or maybe instead of 3 for 3, we share one of those in common. So the key is finding what works for you. And sometimes that takes a little trial and error, but ultimately what it takes is the humility and vulnerability to look inward and ask yourself, where do I operate best? What are my preferences? And many times the best thing to do is think back to a time where you were performing really well, when you were in the zone, where you were in the flow, and then unpack it and start to retrace your steps. Start to reverse engineer it and say, okay, well, what things was I doing? And this comes down to a granular level. Like for me as a professional speaker, my goal is to be on stage 50 times a year, do 50 engagements a year. And I treat every single one of those speaking engagements as if it's my Super Bowl. Every single one of them is incredibly important to me because some group of people is not only making a financial investment, but they're going to invest their most, premium currency, which is their time. And I want to make sure I over deliver for them. And over the last several years, I've refined my own process to make sure that I show up on stage as the best version of myself. But that took a little bit of trial and error. And now I know how much sleep I need, when I need to go to bed, when I need to wake up, what I need to do to rehearse, what I need to do. I have it mapped out so that I have a very distinct routine so that when I step on stage, I'm my best self. And I'm going to continue to try to tweak and refine that so that I can continue to level up. But a lot of that has come from trial and error. So to increase your self-awareness is look back at some times when you performed at a really high level and start to find the commonalities of what it is that you did. But if you also have some courage, you can look at times where maybe you didn't perform very well and look for those commonalities and then do the best you can not to repeat those. And slowly just work on refining your system so that you can show up every day as the best version of yourself consistently, ready to make a maximum contribution. That's what all of us should be working towards. And I always say this one with a smile because really, talk about a basic premise. It just comes down to doing more of what works and doing less of what doesn't. And in order to do that, you've got to constantly be reflecting and evaluating and saying, okay, what am I doing right now that's working for me? And how can I, double click on that? And what things am I doing that are undermining my progress? And how can I reduce or eliminate those?
Yeah, 100%. And that brings up two really important concepts that I'd like to kind of dive into. The first being, and you've touched on this a couple of times throughout the conversation, is you have control over how prepared you are. And that's where I feel like a lot of agents go wrong. And what they struggle with is, you look at a lot of people that consume my content, they want to learn how to leverage YouTube, but they get to the point where they blocked off their time, they're about to start recording, but they have no idea what videos they're going to record. They have no idea what they're going to say in the video. So the anxiety starts to set in, or they're ready to make their phone calls or door knocks. And suddenly they start to have that doubt of, well, I don't even remember what I'm supposed to say. And that lack of preparedness starts to lead to that self-doubt that a lot of people are facing right now, whether it's going to a buyer's presentation, a listing presentation. They don't walk in with confidence. And that's what starts to get to the point where people are doubting if they're even capable of doing it. And they start to say, well, maybe it won't work for me. It's not that the thing doesn't work. It's that you're not doing the work. And I would love to kind of get your take on, how to be prepared or what needs to be done based on any activity in order to make sure you're doing what you need to behind the scenes, so that when the game comes or when it's time, to step out on the court, that you have confidence knowing you did the work ahead of time.
Oh man, you just said that so insightfully and so brilliantly that ultimately preparation is how we increase confidence and how we eliminate or reduce that lack of self-belief. And it's a friend of mine wrote a book called The Work Before the Work. And that's ultimately what it is. Like, before you're going to hit record on a YouTube video, have you done all of the heavy lifting to be fully prepared to make the YouTube video? You can't just show up and wing it, and people still to this day ask me all the time, do I get nervous before a big presentation? And my answer is no. I don't get nervous. Now, I'm excited, and there's many similarities, of the biology of that. Like, my palms are sweating, my heart's accelerating. Like, I feel like I'm getting ready to step into the arena, but it's a pure excitement. And they ask, well, how come you're not nervous? And my answer is always just one word: preparation. Because I have already done everything in my power that I have control over to show up as the best version of myself. And I've learned to surrender and let go of the things that are out of my control. So I don't spend any time worrying about, what could potentially go wrong. I mean, I've game planned certain scenarios, so I'll be prepared if something were to go wrong. But I have done so much time studying the audience or the client or the industry that I'm going to speak to, and find out what things are going well for them and what are some of their challenges and pain points. What are the things that need to be reinforced and celebrated, and where are some areas where maybe they need some tough love? What are the strategies and mindsets that this group will find most helpful? So I have already done a massive amount of due diligence on the industry, on the specific client, and on the audience that I'll be speaking to. Then I've customized a program and built a program, and I've rehearsed it incessantly. Now, I haven't rehearsed it so that I sound robotic on stage. I've just rehearsed it enough that I can just get on stage and be fully present and just let what I'm going to share flow through me. And I also don't use perfection as a yardstick. I've given hundreds of paid keynotes. I've never given a perfect keynote, and I'll never give a perfect keynote because I don't believe there is such a thing as perfection. I mean, if you really want to nitpick, you could look at even the best performance, and I could have said one word just a little bit differently and maybe gotten a better response. So I've already thrown perfection out the window. My goal is to show up for every engagement as prepared as possible, prepared to add value and be helpful to the audience, be fully present and in the moment, and then just have fun. Because if I'm not having fun, why would I expect the audience to have fun? And I think the same overall approach and perspective would work brilliantly in real estate. Like, you just need to figure out what is the work you need to do before the work, and how can you do all of that heavy lifting so that when you get there for an open house or for a showing or to meet with a client, you can be fully present, be totally of service, and the only thing on your mind is how can I add value to them? We have to remember that in any service-based industry, whether we're selling homes or we're giving keynotes, it ain't about me. Yeah. It's about you. And in this case, you is my audience. That's all that matters. I mean, even before we hit record for this conversation, you asked me were there some things I wanted to talk about. And I said, the only things I want to talk about is what you personally find fascinating or what you think is most helpful for your audience. Because I am so grateful to have an opportunity to share with you and your audience that I just want to make sure I'm doing something that adds value to them. Because this isn't about me and it's not about you. It's about how we can work together to provide value for the people that have given their time and attention to you all of these years.
Yeah, and really, the whole concept really reminds me of a conversation I had with one of the other speakers that's going to be at the Atlas Alliance Summit, Joshua Smith, who talked about, in any agent that joins his brokerage, and in the first year, he makes them role play their buyer's presentation 1,000 times in the first year, 3 times a day for the first year. And you wonder, why they're able to show up with such confidence and deliver and win the presentation, because to them there's no anxiety. It's just another day on the court, right? It's just another time role playing it that they've done thousands of times. And I think a lot of people would start to find more confidence in themselves if they actually believe that they're able to do it based on the work that they did ahead of time. But you said something earlier that really leads me to a conversation that I think is what a lot of people are facing right now. Is you talked about being an introvert, and I'm very much the same. Like, I get my energy, my clarity, and my best work done in solitude. I like to be in my little studio, have my space, and that's kind of the world that we're living in now, especially with, Zoom calls and online conferences and everything being kind of digital. But where that's leaving a lot of people when you live in a digital virtual space, blended with the fact that a lot of agents, they're introverts, it leads to loneliness. And a lot of people right now in this digital ecosystem are feeling very lonely on this journey. And that's what starts to, really drain them mentally and emotionally, is they feel like they're by themselves. They feel like they're alone. They feel like, they're the only one facing these self-doubts, these, different pain points, fears of failure. What do you say to people that are facing this loneliness in their business and need to start to, kind of find an avenue to build momentum with?
Well, you really hit it on the head. The feeling of loneliness is one of the hardest and toughest emotions for us to deal with. And once again, I know I've said this several times, you just have to keep reminding yourself that any of these things you're feeling is okay. And I promise you, no matter what it is you're going through or experiencing, you are definitely not alone. And there is a difference between being alone and being lonely. Those things do not mean the same thing. I actually enjoy and thrive on being alone in many areas of my life so that I can replenish and recharge my battery. But I certainly don't want to feel lonely. I want to feel a sense of connectedness. I want to feel a sense of belonging. I want to feel a sense of being a part of something bigger than myself. And many times, though, I believe in having an attitude of extreme ownership. That was the name of a book by Jocko Willink, and it's such a powerful concept, which means I take it upon myself to reach out and make sure that I'm trying to do everything in my power to stay connected to others. I try not to recoil and just, be a turtle that's in his shell. I try to make sure that I'm reaching out and fostering those different relationships. And I've always believed that when you're struggling in any area of your life, you need to care enough to reach out to others and ask for help. And that takes humility, that takes courage, that takes vulnerability. It is definitely not easy to do. But at the same time, whenever you're just in the zone in life, whenever you're just crushing it, like everything in your life is in the flow, you need to remind yourself that there's people that you care about that might not be in that same flow. And you need to be proactive enough to reach out and lend a hand to them. So in every area of life, we should always have a hand extended, either asking for help when we're feeling low or providing and offering help when things are going really well. And we should each have kind of an inner circle of people that we can lean on, people that we trust, people that we know care about us and believe in us and want to see us happy, and having the ability to stay open and connected to them. But one of the hardest things to do, but one of the best things you can do, is to reach out to someone that cares about you and simply say, like, I feel alone on this. I'm going through something right now and I need some help. And I know that's something I've struggled with in the past. There have been times in my life where I've certainly carried around a lot more pain and heartache than I should have, when I should have just had the courage and vulnerability to open up and ask others. And you'll find that, whatever it is you're experiencing, there are other people in this world that are experiencing it as well. So give yourself some grace and give yourself some space, and just remind yourself that it's okay to feel that way, but take it upon yourself to be proactive and ask for some help.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the concepts that I love that you speak about is next play, because I see a lot of people that get in this habit of beating themselves up. Something didn't go right. They said the wrong thing to a client. They lost a listing presentation. They tanked on a YouTube video. Something didn't go right, and they stay stuck in that space. They are constantly beating themselves up. They're reflecting on what could have been done differently, and they're constantly re-auditing what's already been done. I'd love for you to kind of touch on the importance of next play, what it really is by your definition, because I think it's one of the best things that serves agents, knowing that it's inevitable we're going to make mistakes. It's inevitable we're going to do some things wrong, and that we could have done it better. And maybe that means you lost a big opportunity, but that's okay. And so what is the concept of next play, and how should people be implementing this into their business?
Well, next play, as I first learned it in the basketball space, was not letting the play that just happened have a negative impact on the next play that's going to happen. So not letting what just happened affect what's right in front of you. So in the game of basketball, there are going to be fouls, there are going to be missed shots, there are going to be turnovers, there are going to be missed calls by the officials. These things happen all of the time. And if every time one of those things happens, you allow it to paralyze yourself, you allow it to change your optimism or your body language or your energy, you'll never generate the momentum to continue to play and move forward. So, while it's no one's preference to miss a shot or to turn it over, that's a part of the game. And you just have to accept that. And you need to quickly refocus the lens on the next play. Because the most important part to understand is any energy or focus that you put on something that just happened, that is now unchangeable, it's in the past, means you don't have that energy available to invest it in the present moment. So you can't let a shot you missed 2 minutes ago affect your ability to make the next shot. We have to be able to have what we call a whiteboard memory. It's like whatever was written on the whiteboard, just wipe it clean and you've got a fresh slate. And it's the same thing especially in any type of sales or in leadership, is we just have to quickly refocus the lens to the next play. Now, also true in basketball is most elite players and coaches and teams, they'll go back and they'll watch film. They'll go back and watch the game from the previous day because they want to unpack it and learn. And like I said earlier in this conversation, I do believe in learning from the past. So if something isn't going your way, you said you tanked a YouTube video or you met with a prospective client and it didn't go very well, in the heat of that moment, it's rarely the best time to scrutinize and to agonize over it. Like, we just need to quickly move to the next play. But then when you have some breathing room, you can go back and look and ask yourself, are there any lessons to learn from this? If I had an opportunity to do this exact scenario again, is there something that I would do differently? Like, where is the opportunity for growth here? And that, I think, is incredibly important to do. So it's not that we never look back. It's that in the moment, we don't spend time agonizing and being paralyzed by it. We just have to quickly move to the next play. If you're going to show 5 homes in one day and the first 2 don't go very well, are you going to drag that energy into the 3rd, 4th, and 5th meeting? Well, if so, you're going to be less likely to sell those homes. Whereas if you can just quickly say, that didn't go the way I prefer, but I wipe it clean and I move to the next one. If you can have the same level of energy and optimism, regardless of what just happened, that's in your best interest. And it's no different than shooting a basketball. The elite level shooters, if they miss 4 shots in a row, that has no impact on how they shoot the 5th shot. They don't even remember that they missed the last 4. They shoot it with the confidence as if they had made the last 4. And that's the type of mindset that we need to have. And, you better believe, even as a keynote speaker, there are times where I'll be on stage and maybe I forgot to share an anecdote or a portion of a story, or maybe I said something that usually elicits some laughter and there's dead, awkward silence. Like, I can't tank the rest of the keynote because that moment didn't go the way that I wanted. I just have to move on to the next play. And any time in our lives where we can have that type of resilience and grit, because that's really what it is. It's having the resilience to say, it does not matter what just happened. I'm not going to let it to affect what's happening now. Will always be coming from a place of strength.
That's incredible. And I think it reminds me of a quote where I read that, growth doesn't come from experience. Growth comes from reflecting on the experience. And
I love that.
Really just looking at the fact that, you need to reflect on it, but don't beat yourself up and don't live back in that. Use it to grow and focus on the next play with intent and, with a mission and with confidence. But, that leads to, where I'd like to really wrap this up with is you are going to be speaking at the Atlas Alliance Summit. And, every time I've seen you on a call, you just drop so much gold and you give tactical clarity. You've got frameworks. You've got all of these things that people can so easily consume and implement into the business. What can people expect from you on stage at the Atlas Alliance Summit this September in Nashville?
Well, I certainly appreciate that. And every time you and I get to interact, whether it's a quick text message exchange or one of these longer form discussions, I always feel better, having had the conversation or the interaction. You truly inspire me, and I appreciate that. So anyone that's going to be at the Atlas Summit can expect more of this. I mean, I can promise you don't ever have to worry about me being high energy and high enthusiasm. But my number one goal will be to share practical and actionable strategies that everyone in the audience can implement immediately to improve both personally and professionally, to improve their mental, physical, and emotional wellness, to show up consistently as their best selves so that they can make a maximum contribution. And if done with the right tactics, then that's how you absolutely grow your real estate business. It's about putting these fundamentals in place and building the foundation and getting clarity and having the self-awareness to know what things you're doing well and what areas do you need to improve, and then putting a plan together. And ultimately, every single person in that audience needs to get crystal clear on how they define winning in the real estate space. Yeah. They need to get crystal clear on what winning looks like to them. And once they're crystal clear on that North Star, then they need to develop a series of processes and systems that will allow them to systematically and incrementally work towards that. And then if they can do that with energy and enthusiasm and optimism, then they'll be their most productive selves. And a good portion of that, again, as the sign says, will be in simplifying all of this. It'll be letting go of all of the things that are distracting us, all of the white noise, all of the things that are overwhelming us that we don't have control over, and just working towards mastery of a handful of basics. And I am incredibly confident that the people that attend the Atlas Summit and put pen to paper and take these notes down, but then more importantly, execute and implement and put these things into action, it will be an absolute game changer. I have seen it done with thousands and thousands of people. And that really is if you were going to ask me the reason that I'm going to be there, it is going to be to help people connect what they know with what they do. That gap between them is called a performance gap. The gap between what we know we should do to build a successful real estate business and what we actually do on a daily basis, how wide that gap is will determine how successful you are. And the whole reason I'm going to be there and everything I'll share on stage will be designed to help people incrementally, systematically close that gap so that they're doing the things they know they need to do to be their best selves.
I'm so excited, man. And that's such an important concept that I don't see enough people talking about is bridging that gap, because everybody says that they know what they need to do, but they're not executing and they don't know how to bridge that gap and how to start to get into action. And I know that you're going to bring that heat because I've seen it before. And I would love to know, you've done so many talks before, you've done so many keynotes, and every single time you're a crowd favorite.
Thank you.
What is the importance of going to events? Because for me, at least, being an event attendee, the events are always what has been the biggest catalyst, pivot point in my business and my life that has gone on to bring and yield, skyrocket my production, skyrocket my business, get me in better shape. They've always been these catalysts to massive change and massive growth. And I would love to know from your perspective, your opinion on the importance of getting together around like-minded people, the importance of learning from practitioners that started out just like you but now you can avoid all of the pitfalls and shortcomings they had to experience to learn from them at the other end of where you're trying to go. So from your keynotes perspective, what is the importance of attending events like this?
Well, there's three that come to mind immediately. The first, as you just teed up so perfectly, is to learn new operating systems, learn new best practices, learn what some others have done that maybe you could try to either emulate or do slightly differently based on mistakes maybe that they've made. So we certainly want to learn, and I know there'll be no shortage of just incredible information. I mean, I'm excited to speak, and that's a true honor. I'm excited to attend and to learn from everybody else. So I get just as jacked up being in the seats as I do being on stage. So the first thing is to learn. The second thing is to connect. Real estate is a relationship business, and learning how to forge strong relationships and improve your personal influence and impact is certainly important, but it's also important to create a network of people that are doing what it is that you're doing. People that you can, count on and reach out to when you're feeling alone or lonely. People that you can reach out to if you want to bounce a question off of them. People you can collaborate with. This is not a zero-sum game. I don't want people showing up to this event thinking everyone here is my competition. No, you show up going, everyone here is my brother or sister. Everyone here is trying to do what it is that I do, and I want to help champion them and empower them, and I need them to help give me a lift and help me as well. So being able to connect is incredibly important. It's been my experience that, you'll learn some great stuff from people on stage, especially the heavy hitters that you've got coming in. But you'll learn just as much in between sessions and at meals and at nights from the other people. There'll be just as much experience and competence in the audience as there will be on stage. So it's so important to connect with others. And then the third component is to share. One of my core beliefs is that a candle loses nothing by lighting another candle. And anytime that we get a chance to share something we know, to offer a compliment to someone else, to provide some help, to send the elevator back down to maybe someone who's a few years behind where we are. Whenever we get a chance to be the teacher, we learn so much. We learn because in order for you to share or teach something of value, you have to know it. And I do believe in this concept of lighting other people's candles. If you're there and you're helping out somebody that's a fellow attendee, your candle will not shine any dimmer. I promise you that. It will only eventually get brighter because we can all work together to lift each other up. And I've also believed that, if you have something of value and you choose to hold on to it and keep it for yourself and have kind of a scarcity mindset instead of an abundant mindset, that's an act of selfishness. I also believe that a compliment unshared is an act of selfishness. Yeah. If you have something nice to share with someone else and you choose not to say it, you're being selfish. So if you have something nice to say, just say it. So for no other reason, you show up there so you can make sure you learn, you make sure you connect, and you make sure you share. And if you give your best in all three of those areas during that summit, I promise you it will be an absolute, not just game changer for your business, it will be a life-changing, transformational experience for you.
It's going to be exactly that. When people get there and they see the production of this and the intent behind it, really an event that's transformational based on raising standards, this is going to be a really, really powerful moment. And I genuinely can't wait to have you there, man. It's going to be incredible. And the fact that people get to meet you and spend time with you is going to be something that people will never forget. And again, I think this is going to be that pivot point for a lot of people where they realize that amidst all the chaos lies opportunity. And a lot of people are going to use this as that breaking point to go into the next phase of their business. But, I'd love to kind of bring it full circle, Allen, with where can people find you? Because you've got books, you've got content, you're rocking and rolling, and you're very omnipresent, but you've got so much material that people can start to consume to get excited about following you in your next keynote session. Where do people find you? How can people get in touch? And where would you recommend people starting based on the various books that you also have?
Well, the first thing they can do is just go to allensteinjr.com. That's kind of the hub of my digital presence. And you can find out anything and everything about my work, my message, and the programs that I offer. I'm also at Allen Stein Jr. On Instagram, on X, and on LinkedIn. Very easy to find. And I'm very good about getting back to folks on DM. I try to be incredibly responsive and accessible. So if anyone wants to reach out, if you just want to introduce yourself or ask a question, I'm good about getting back to folks. And then I do have 2 books, Raise Your Game and Sustain Your Game. Both are easily found on Amazon and Audible or anywhere you get your books and audiobooks. And just please know this, as I said, outside of the hour that I'll actually be on stage, the rest of the time I'm there, I want to be adding value. I want to be helping people. So anyone, please come up and say hello. Please introduce yourselves. I mean, I'm going to be there learning and sharing and connecting, but I'm there to build relationships. And if I can add value to anyone's lives or do anything to help anyone that's going to be a part of your tribe at the Atlas Summit, it'd be my honor to do it. Because I'm an introvert, I'll make sure I have plenty of alone time leading up to it so that my battery is full. And the moment I head out of Nashville, I'll make sure I have equal amount of time to refill my battery. So while I'm there, I'm going to leave it all out on the court. So please don't hesitate to come up and say hello. It'd be my honor to help.
Amazing, man. Well, guys, I'm going to link all of Allen's incredible stuff below. Again, I've checked it out, gone down the rabbit hole, and it's absolutely game-changing when you start to see how simple it really can be to become an elite, to succeed, to get into momentum, and the ways that you break things down give so much confidence and clarity, which I think now more than ever is exactly what people need. So, Allen, thank you again, man. I can't wait to see you at the Atlas Alliance Summit. I know everybody that's attending is fired up and ready to just soak in all that you have to bring, because going into this next phase of business, that's truly what people need to do, is focus on the fundamentals, build that strong pyramidal foundation, as you alluded to, and be able to make an unbreakable business by doing the right things and having that discipline that you've talked about.
Yes, sir. I can't wait. It's going to be a great time.
All right, guys. Well, again, check out all of Allen's stuff. Send him a DM. Again, he's a servant leader at heart. He really does just want to pour into and help. And we'll see you guys at the Atlas Alliance Summit.